Hi everyone. So CL Strife was asking a question about the chameleon-like nature of INFJs that's often talked about. And by that we tend to understand something like the ability that INFJs have to adapt to the particular kinds of people they're interacting with, that they're in touch with, and that INFJs are able to kind of emote and adapt their behavior to that particular kind of audience. And that's understood to have potentially manipulative elements if used for evil purposes, right? At least that's what we sometimes come across in the mainstream literature and articles and things like that. And I've talked about the chameleon-like nature of INFJs before, but now that I have solidified my theory around INFJs, in the course of writing the Ecstatic Soul and then the Infinite Soul, my two books, and coming to this sort of tripartite or potentially four-part subtype articulation of INFJ types, I think that the resources we have to understand many topics, such as the chameleon-like nature of INFJs, is really multiplied. And hopefully I can illustrate that again, or, strikingly in the case of this particular issue. So what can we say about the chameleon-like nature of INFJs? First of all, is it true? Is it not true? My answer to this would be, it's true, but we need more nuance. Of course we need more nuance, because we're people who like to think and to research things as deeply as possible. So one notion that will be very helpful to you to understand how people can be chameleon-like, regardless of whether or not they're INFJ, is whether they possess introjective FE and NI, right? So, of course, in practice, it's mostly going to be ENFJs, at least some ENFJs, and INFJs, at least some INFJs. So why is introjective FE so important here? And then we'll mention NI, because it being connected with NI rather than SI is also important. Well, introjective FE, if you refer back to the video that I released on the topic fairly recently, if you haven't watched it, I encourage you to watch it, about the two different uses of FE. It's important, I think, to understand that function and all that can be considered an outcome of that in people's behavior. Introjective FE is the quality of FEUs whereby you're able to absorb the particular, you're in relation, obviously you're relating to a group of people or a tribe. That's the nature of what FE does. It's a social extroverted function. When you relate to FE in the manner of introjection, you are introjecting, that is to say, assimilating the tribe's customs, norms, organizations, values, and so on. You're making them yours, okay? So you're not being like the bossy FE user who's very much a projective FE user, the one who's imposing all of these things onto the tribe. In the case of introjective FE, you're making those yours, you're assimilating them, you're appropriating them, and in some cases you can, in fact often pathological, you can identify with them. So the thing about introjective FE is that it's not just about mores, norms, values, and organization. It's also about the way that a group has a particular way of functioning, that different types of people operate and behave in the world. As part of this whole package, you're also introjecting that. So you're introjecting a kind of lived knowledge of how people operate, meaning you can emulate it, okay? That really contributes to the fact that INFJs, for example, and some ENFJs that are not too projective can be chameleons. NI is important in explaining why, for example, it's so common to talk about INFJ chameleons, but so rare to talk about ISFJ chameleons. It's true, and when we come across ISFJs in real life, they don't really seem like chameleons. They seem to have a certain more rigidity. They're not as fluid in how they relate to people. This is linked to the fact that NI is a fluid function in terms of introverted perception, whereas SI is more rigid, is more literal, is more discrete. whereas NI is more fluid and continuous, in the same way that SE in the realm of extroverted perception is more literal, is more sort of in your face, it's more discrete, it's not continuous, whereas NE tends to, you know, see patterns connecting together, and a lot of NE humor is about that, where like there's a fluid merging of different items of, you know, extroverted perception data sort of connected together, with SE is more like this and that, NE is more like this together with that. Well, at the level of introverted perception, the same happens. SI is more literal and discrete, NI is more continuous and imagistic, meaning that that's going to, when it's interacting with, as it does with extroverted judgment of an introjective nature, you're going to have all the qualities of introjective FE combined with the fluidity of NI. That means that you're going to be fluidly able to facilitate different contexts where you will seize whatever particular items of behavior and ways of relating to others, interpersonal patterns, and you're going to sort of embrace them, make them yours, and show that to other people. That's being a chameleon. In the case of introjective FE with more literalism, like the SI type of things, it's much more likely, and you'll see that there's a rigidity that manifests. So an ISFJ, for example, will be able to introject and relate to particular different groups, but they will be this way with one group, that way with that other group, and that third way with the third group. There won't be a lot of fluidity between those different, like, sort of discrete categories, whereas with the INFJ it's much more wavy, okay? So that's how you can understand it. Now, once we've said that, we need to return to the question of, okay, we have different subtypes of INFJ. We have the adaptive submissive, we have the solipsistic, and we have the spiritualized and spiritual. Okay, so first of all, let's just say that the solipsistic INFJ represses FE. It's what they do. So their FE is not projective. It's still going to be potentially introjective, but because it's repressed, it's not really there. So it will be kind of, and in fact, experience bear this out, like solipsistic INFJs tend not to really be chameleons. Okay, so we can leave them aside. There's a difference between the way that adaptive submissive INFJs are chameleons and the way that spiritualized and spiritual INFJs are chameleons. I would say that's because there's two ways of being a chameleon. There's a positive way and a negative way, right? Or there's a positive way and a not so positive way. The positive way is if it brings good. The negative way, if it's like, it's neutral and maybe it kind of keeps you in your self-absorbed world. That tends to happen with adaptive submissive, or at least the adaptive submissive INFJ is going to struggle a little bit with knowing what to do with it. So first of all, to mention that yes, you need an eye for this kind of chameleon-esque type of behavior to be operative. Now, the adaptive submissive INFJ represses their NI, but because NI is the main function, it still has its very basic set of properties. It's still going to be fluid and continuous, whether it's repressed or not. So the adaptive submissive INFJ does use chameleon-like features as a defense mechanism most of the time, but they're going to feel guilty about it at some level. And in a sense, and I know this can come across a little bit shocking, but if you spend lots of time feeling guilty, it also means that you're spending lots of time being self-absorbed at some level, like you're not really exploiting and harnessing the potentialities of this chameleon-like behavior for broader good. So you're going to be spending most time just being self-directed and guilty about it. In the case of the spiritualized or spiritual INFJ, the thing about it is these INFJs just are basically going to get to a stage where they just accept that that's the strength that they can use, right? To enlist people, to get them on board for particular projects, for particular movements, to share their excitement, to share the insights of their NI, things like that. So they won't even really think of that as chameleon-like features. I think often in many cases, it's much more going to translate as something that just looks like empathy, because it won't be sort of soiled by guilt. It won't be self-directed. It'll just be embodied, relating to others in a way that adapts to other people. Often it's just going to be experienced as empathy, and that's the healthy manifestations of what in other contexts we call chameleon-like. Okay, so let me know in the comments what you think. Give me a like if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget, I've written 2 books on the INFJ if you want to know more. These 2 books, the latest one is The Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World, if you want to know more about how INFJs can find happiness, purpose, value in the world while remaining true to themselves, authentic to themselves. So this is the book to get, How to Be an Infinite Soul. That's the whole challenge. And by the way, the link is below, and if you have already got the book and loved the book, but haven't reviewed it yet, I would really appreciate your review. It will help massively towards referencing on Amazon, and that directly impacts how much money I receive. So I'd be so grateful, just a few minutes of your time. Now, the prequel to that book, The Ecstatic Soul, my first book on the INFJ, lots of reviews on Amazon, you can check, link is below, is more focused on the inside of the INFJ mind, the INFJ consciousness. What is it like to have an INFJ consciousness? What are the existential manifestations of that? And the two books, of course, go very well together. Now, as you know, the lifeblood of my channel are my Patreon supporters. Please consider becoming a Patreon. There's a link down below if you would like to, anywhere from $3.50 a month. You can interact with me there. You can suggest new content. And importantly, you get access every 2 weeks to bonus content, more in-depth discussions of my topics in my books and here. Okay, guys, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.